we are not healthcare. And really the root cause of almost everything that we deal with is really a healthcare issue that manifests itself into, a public safety issue.
We really need to start focusing on keeping jobs in our community.
I've been to one groundbreaking in the last year, and it's the only one I was invited to.
If we're going to solve the housing crisis, I come back to the point I made earlier, for folks who can't afford it, it's going to have to be subsidized by the province.
When I look at building communities, it's like, what are the enabling factors that we can actually have influence on in our community that's going to support families and children?
A lot of chickens are coming home to roost by allowing this transition and transformation into a real estate-based economy to occur.
Hello, I'm Stuart McNish, and you're listening to Conversations Live. Conversations Live is a long-form public affairs dialogue series addressing the big issues of our time. For each episode, we bring together subject matter experts for a deep conversation designed to provide you with information that helps you make more informed decisions. I hope you enjoy it. There are 161 mayors in British Columbia. Tonight, 6 of them, 5 of them right at the moment, the 6th is hopefully on his way, joining us for Conversations Live, the Mayor's Panel. Oh, to be a mayor in British Columbia in 2026. I'm not sure that I envy you your jobs. Under the Municipal Act of British Columbia, a mayor is the chief executive officer of the municipality or city they were elected to govern. Working with council, mayors set the direction for the community, everything from affordability, infrastructure, safety, zoning, and housing bylaws. Tonight, we're going to talk to our panel about their job and their ability to fulfill their mandates. We're all aware that this is an election year, so just so you're aware, this is not an election panel. This is focused on the nuts and bolts of the job of running local jurisdictions. Today we come to you from Kemkemale, the land of many maples. These are the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nations who have lived on and continue to call these lands home. Osiam. Thank you for introducing me to that Janet Austin, former Lieutenant Governor who joins us. And also in our audience today is Sean Crowley, the U.S. Consul General, joining us tonight. Thank you for being with us. Conversations Live is a long-form public affairs dialogue series that seeks to advance our understanding of the big issues of our times. Our goal is to share ideas and insights that help each of us gain a greater understanding of our communities, our province, and our country. There are many organizations that help us to host Conversations Live, and without them, we could not bring these events to you live, in person, and live online. So I'm going to give them all a big shout out. You will see their logos and names scroll across the screen throughout the evening. And as I say, I can't thank them enough, so I'm going to name them all. KPMG is our hosting sponsor, and our other hosting sponsor is RBC. Our annual sponsors are Digital, BD Developments, Polygon, Stem Cell Technologies, Helijet, Rennie & Co., Pacific Salmon Foundation, and thanks to the support of Fortis BC. Our supporters are BCIT, Falkirk, The Goodman Report, OPI, and, I did say Falkirk. I'll give them a double shout out. And we work in association with Mario Canseco Research Co. and with Playbook, your go-to market communications and government relations partners. Our media partner is the Vancouver Sun, so we're live streaming on the Vancouver Sun, and live streaming services are provided by Oh Boy Productions. As I say, without their generous support, this program would not be possible. Now, one last little bit of business before we get to the heart of the evening. Anyone wishing to submit a question, be it from our in-person audience or online, please go to slido.com, enter the code Conversations Live, and send in your question. I'll be receiving your questions, and I'll share them with the panelists where I can. Now, that being said, while I may not deliver your question verbatim, I will be motivated by your thoughts, and they will help to shape my questions through the evening. Our topic today is mayors. Are they doing their jobs well? What are the main issues? What stands in their way, and how are they navigating their way around, through, under, and over those obstacles? We have a remarkable panel. Brad West, I believe, is in transit, and his seat is waiting for him when he arrives, Mayor of Port Coquitlam. Linda Buchanan of the City of North Vancouver. Ken Sim, the Mayor of the City of Vancouver. Leonard Krog, Nanaimo's Mayor. Richard Stewart of Coquitlam, and Mike Hurley of the City of Burnaby. Thank you all for joining us. Now, just before we get to the panel, here is Mario Canseco, who had conducted a poll about how well city governments in BC are perceived as to doing their job. Arav, can you run that video, please?
We asked residents of every municipality in Metro Vancouver about the way their local government is managing specific issues. At least 3 in 5 residents expressed very positive reviews on managing parks and recreation facilities, providing good sanitation services, and fostering artistic and cultural activities. Majorities of Metro Vancouverites are also happy with 3 other aspects of life in their municipality: environmental stewardship, tourism promotion, and mobility. There is a significant generational gap on the environment. Younger residents are more likely to be happy with the way municipal governments are handling this file, while those aged 55 and over are more likely to be on the fence or unaware of what cities are doing to help the environment. 2 other issues garner the approval of more than half of Metro Vancouverites: managing development and growth and enhancing the quality of life of residents. Fewer residents believe their municipal government is working in a transparent and unbiased fashion, an issue where respondents in Delta and Richmond come in dead last at just 27%. On 4 other issues, the level of satisfaction is lower: managing the city's finances, dealing with crime, engaging with residents, and dealing with homelessness and poverty. Concerns about homelessness and poverty are prevalent across every municipality, marking a significant change from a decade ago, when the issue was top of mind in only a handful of cities across the Lower Mainland. For Conversations Live, I'm Mario Canseco from ResearchGo.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, panelists. You know, Richard Stewart, you're not running for re-election, so maybe you have a little more freedom to kick off this evening's panel. What's eating at you in your ability to do your job right at the moment?
Well, actually, I would argue that the last item on Mario's poll, where homelessness and poverty were seen as failures of municipal government, and they're not municipal responsibilities at all. And so I think we have a real challenge sometimes in local governments trying to make sure we stick to our lane of work. And last night we had a council meeting that actually didn't go, we spent an awful lot of time on provincial issues that ought to have been dealt with by the province. And I think that's one of the biggest issues facing local government. I'm lucky. I'm the mayor of the largest city in the province that doesn't have political parties at the table. We're 9 independents, and we're almost always unanimous. But last night we had 2, 5, 4 votes, and that's perhaps an indication that there is more division now. There is starting to be more conflict between the opinions of residents, and generational differences. One of the big votes last night was related to climate change, and we saw the generational realities that the folks with my color hair might not be as passionate about climate change as folks with Ken's color hair.
Well, Leonard, let's go to you, because I know homelessness is an issue that you are grappling with as well. It's a big problem for you.
I never describe it as homelessness. I talk about the mental health, addictions, trauma, and brain injury crisis that manifests itself in homelessness and the petty crime we associate with trying to feed a drug habit, generally speaking. And I see some nods in the audience. Look, it's the crisis facing British Columbia, although it's hard to call it a crisis after at least a decade of it being obvious and in everyone's faces. And it is the thing that we can do least about. It is the most frustrating aspect of my job, quite candidly. I'm used to taking criticism. I've been in politics on and off for a while. I see Carol Taylor in the front there smiling. I used to look across admiringly at her, thinking, God, it would be nice to be in cabinet. But look, the rest of it, you know what? We're a much more diverse, interesting community than we were 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. There's a lot to recommend being a mayor in British Columbia. We live in a wonderful part of the world. We live in a modern, liberal, stable democracy with public education and public health care, and we need to be grateful for that. But yeah, it's the street disorder. That's the term I more often use. And it is incredibly frustrating, and it is frankly unbecoming of a 21st century democracy that we have thousands of British Columbians living in that way.
So Richard noted that it's not a municipal or city responsibility, but Ken, I mean, you have to deal with the downtown east side. You made it a part of your platform when you started, and you went out and actively sought to address that issue, but it still is there.
Is that a question or?
I'm leaving it open to you to answer in a way that makes us say, how do we address this? It may not be directly your responsibility.
Yeah,
but
no, look, I think at the end of the day, by the way, I've had the honor and privilege of working with all the mayors up here. And while we may not agree on every single thing, I can tell you these are great individuals that really care about their communities. And so it's a privilege being up here. I would agree with a lot, with what Richard and Leonard have said. And you can approach this problem as it's not a responsibility, and that's absolutely right. We actually do not have the jurisdiction. We are not healthcare, and really the root cause of almost everything that we deal with is really a healthcare issue that manifests itself into, a public safety issue. And we have to do something about it. And so at the City of Vancouver, when we ran in 2022, we said, look, we're going to think out of the box, and we're going to throw a bunch of resources towards mental health nurses. We called it mental health nurses at the time, and we said 100 because we wanted to see what we can do. And the health authority took that, and they actually turned it into 58 mental health workers, and they revised the plan down to 50, but we're happy with the results. We had to prove a business case or an operational case for it, which we did. And we still can't do anything about it because now that the business case is shown to work and we're having positive results, once again, we don't have jurisdiction, we don't have the money. We're in charge of running cities. And so that's public safety reacting after the fact. It's sanitations, it's fixing potholes, it's issuing permits and bylaws. The frustration I think we can, as mayors, we all have is, and by the way, I'm not attacking any one party or whatever, because this problem has been going on for a very long time. And so it doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum. Victoria has not taken care of what they need to take care of. We've identified that we need involuntary care or mandatory compassionate care for people that are dealing with significant mental health challenges or substance use disorder.
So to be clear, when you say Victoria, you're not talking the City of Victoria, you're talking about the provincial
government.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, we like the City of Victoria.
Yeah.
And in fact, we were united. Mayors, a bunch of the mayors up here sitting with me today, were at that press conference on September 16th of 2023, after we had the horrific incident on September 4th where an innocent bystander was murdered and another one had his hand cut off. The person that they apprehended had 60 interactions before that, and that person was deeply sick. And so, yeah, we called out the provincial government on, look, do something about it or don't. If you're not going to do something about it, just tell us. We're not going to like the answer, and you're not living up to your accountability, but at least we know. They've come back, and they to their credit, they said they'd provide 400 beds. I think we need 3,200 beds, but it's a good start. But since they made that announcement more than a year and a half ago, we only have about 20 beds, none of which are in the City of Vancouver. So I truly believe, and I say this respectfully, the solution's simple. What we need to do, we all know what we need to do. It's whether or not we can get the senior levels of government to live up to their accountabilities. And I think we're at this point now where we have to call them out. Because, look, we have thick skins up here. You can yell at us all you want, but it's not going to be effective because we don't have the jurisdiction to fix these problems. And until we daylight this and actually point the finger or the responsibility, highlight the responsibility that the province should step up to, we're not going to solve this.
As you are right now.
As we are right now. And we do it respectfully. Like, this isn't personal. Just do it or don't. And if you're not going to do it, tell us. Be honest to the residents of BC.
Linda, you also have a homelessness issue, but not to the same extent. But it still impacts you.
100%. I think there's not probably a municipality in British Columbia or elsewhere that doesn't have an issue with homelessness. And I will start by also, it's a pleasure to be up here, and so thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all of you for coming out. I would say my perspective is not necessarily dissimilar to my colleagues, but I frame it slightly different. At the end of the day, these are people, and these are people who are experiencing homelessness, and they're experiencing homelessness for all kinds of things that, going back, generational trauma, mental health, addictions, you name it. And I think where we have the most ability to have impact is looking upstream. These are not, we're dealing with within our cities what's happening immediately on the street or in the parks or wherever it might be. We don't have the levers, we don't have the tools. When I look at building communities, it's like, what are the enabling factors that we can actually have influence on in our community that's going to support families and children? Upstream. It's more expensive, but it's a lot less expensive at the end of the day than having to deal with the downstream when you don't actually invest in those things. And that requires a really strong partnership and alignment with all levels of government, because we only have so many levers at our level. But the other levels do need to work, and it's much more complicated today, and everybody needs to be at the table, and everyone needs to be looking at what are the systemic issues, how do we actually solve those issues. On the North Shore, just as an example, we do have an issue, and it's not as prevalent as Nanaimo or Vancouver. But we come together on the North Shore, both all three local governments, so the District of North Van and West Vancouver, and as well with the Squamish Nation and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. So we work as 5 governments on almost any issue that we believe impacts us all, which could be almost anything. But the big issues, homelessness, housing, transportation, to name the sort of the top 3. So we actually had a group when myself and Mayor Little and former Mayor Booth were first elected. There's a group in the community who was working on homelessness and had been doing it for a long time. And they sort of came at us and said, well, how come you guys aren't doing anything? We're like, well, we've just been newly elected. We've been here for about 6 months. But okay, we'll pull a group together. So we pulled 5 of us together with our staff. Everything we do is local, from the elected side as well as the staff side, and put together a very coordinated plan, studied the issue, how is it impacting our communities, and how can we work across our 5 communities to put programs in place, services in place. We educated our staff in terms of, so frontline staff who are engaging with people wherever they might be, have the resources to be able to refer them to the right place. We have navigators now in the community. So we're working very hard to solve what we can, where we can. But at the end of the day, I feel my background's public health. I've done it for 30 years. We really need to look at the entire system. They don't happen overnight. They are huge issues. They're very complex, and they are going to require a lot of time to solve.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point, that there has to be an alignment across various levels. Mike, do you think that alignment is starting to come into play now? Because I think it would be very easy to say in the past the approach to dealing with mental health and addictions was not necessarily in line with local governments. Do you feel that there's a shift coming?
Well, I do believe there's a better understanding of the issues around mental health and addictions, but I don't see that alignment. Frankly, there's never been a meeting that I'm aware of where the three levels of government, and I mean the three levels of government, provincial, federal, and cities, sit down together and actually develop a plan that we can all work on and be on the same page. You know, from my perspective, there's been too much tick in the box exercises instead of actual plans about how we're going to deal with these issues at the different levels. I can tell you in Burnaby, we have about 260 unhoused people at any one time. 46 of those are living in cars. And I go out and talk to them. I know most of them by name now. So I understand that they just can't afford to get into housing. Those 46, I think if the province or the federal government would step up with us and provide the housing, we'd provide the land, we'd be very interested in doing that and doing that kind of work. Because these people are not, they don't have addiction issues. They're just living in poverty. And, you know, we need to start addressing those issues so we can get to the real more serious issues in my mind. There are opportunities to do that. We also have 8 people who are over 70 years old who are living on the streets. That breaks my heart to talk to these people, human beings over 70 years old that are living in the street because they just can't afford to get into housing. So I would really like to start addressing those issues that I feel should be low-hanging fruits for us to fix while we're working together to come up with answers to the more complex issues. So we have hired a group that goes out into the community and works, because we cannot, although we get lots of complaints about people being in our parks, the courts have quite clearly said we cannot move them along unless we have somewhere to send them. So, you know, those are the issues that municipalities deal with. We're the easiest level of government for people to yell and shout at. But, you know, we really need to start having a plan for each level of difficulty and knock off the lowest level of difficulties first. And then we can get to that more complex. But it all starts with the 3 levels of government sitting down, coming up with a plan that we can all buy into and work towards the same goals. It seems like we're always going in different directions, and we're never going to solve anything with that.
So what's the likelihood of getting those 3 levels of government together like that? It hasn't, we're not there yet.
I've only been asking for it for 7 years, so maybe another
Right,
7.
so how do we get there, Linda? Yeah.
Is it on? Yeah, sorry. Actually, I should say, so when we dealt with the issue of homelessness, it was the 3 local, 2 Indigenous. When we looked at transportation, it actually is 3 levels of government. So all 3 of us are sitting at a table. We now, and again with the Indigenous government. So we actually, around transportation, it was started with our MLA, but we brought in the MPs as well. And so it's been several years, actually more than several, it's been about 8 years of really identifying the issues, understanding and, you know, busting the myths of why people think there's a lot of congestion on the North Shore. I'm sure none of you have experienced that.
That's a myth. It's a reality.
We did know that, but there is a lot of what people believe as to why the issue is. And so once we sort of got through that, and then we did put together a plan. We have the local government, we have the MPs and the MLAs. So when we're lobbying them, they're already up to date on why we're lobbying. Where it gets challenging is when we start to lobby them to say, you know, now we need the funding. So you've promised this BRT, where's the funding? You've promised permanent, predictable funding at the federal level for our mayor's council and our plan across the region. Where's the funding? And so that's where it breaks down, but we are at the table having those conversations on the North Shore.
So a big issue, of course, is affordability. If you want to be able to have that kind of housing or place that you can move people from having to live outdoors to indoors, you have to have affordable housing. How on earth do we create affordable housing? Everybody talks about it, but I'm really perplexed as to how we develop it. Leonard, I see you nodding, and Ken, I know that you want to jump in on that too, okay? Yeah.
I'm going to jump in and say, firstly, I disagree with Mike entirely. I think you go to the hard cases first because they are causing the most social disorder in our streets, causing the most crime, and using the most resources, and no hope of getting better because our system currently does not respond to those people who need. Ken mixed up what Mike Diaz, the mayor of Kelowna, Tom Diaz, and myself. He calls it compulsory compassionate care. I call it secure and voluntary care. But in any event, on the housing issue, look, Nanaimo actually has a fairly limited amount of land, but we have worked with the province, the Heart and Hearth program. We have provided a lot of sites. We've seen a lot of housing built, but we still have 800, 900, 1,000 people. The homelessness count is, I think, the official one is 661. And we're a lot cheaper to live in than the rest of you folks who are here from the Lower Mainland, I can tell you. The province has to step up. I mean, European countries and cities recognize that there's a portion of their population who will not be able to afford market housing probably ever unless their economic circumstances individually change. So what is it? Vienna is something like 70% of the housing in Vienna, I see the former Lieutenant Governor nodding, so I got to be right, is owned by the state or the city. Like, get with it, British Columbia. We are not going to, the private market can overbuild and all of those things, but it's not going to fix it. And the province imposing mandates on us, so we're on the naughty list or the not naughty list. I mean, hell, there's a joke that circulates in the planning community. If you can get through to the Oak Bay Planning Department, instead of saying, good afternoon, may I help you, it's, how the hell did you get this number? Look, we're doing our best in Nanaimo, but it's not solving the problem. And the folks, we've got a number of folks live in cars, and the seniors' poverty thing is very much an issue. But again, senior government has to solve it. And I say that we will work with them on any level as we are doing now. In terms of providing land, long-term leases, we've got several major units up and running. It's helping. But it's not going to fix somebody who has a severe mental health, addiction, trauma, and brain injury problem. It's not going to fix it.
Ken, Richard, yeah.
I just absolutely want to agree with Leonard on that one because, let's face it, the problem we've got right now is there's poverty and the shortage of housing, but the really challenging ones are those that are mentally ill and addicted, and those are both provincial responsibilities, clearly. So my daughter was very public with her mental health struggles a decade ago, with her hospitalizations, the suicidality, the struggles that a person with mental illness has. She has a family with resources. We could mortgage our house. We could buy the health care she needed. She's now a psychiatric nurse and treating people that are in those facilities that she used to be in. There is success available to us, but unfortunately, the public sector, the public side of things, simply doesn't have enough beds. We had a massive expansion of the Red Fish facility in Coquitlam, moved from Willingdon. The massive expansion was 11 new beds.
11.
11.
Yeah.
It was $150 million, so about $1 million a bed for a new facility. It's a beautiful facility. We need way more of them. So my daughter, the mental health nurse, got seconded into a position where she was responsible for filling the shifts for the ward. And she kept telling me, Dad, I got half the number of nurses I have as I have shifts. I have twice as many shifts as nurses. And the province came in and solved it by increasing the ratio. So now she has 1/3 as many nurses as she needs instead of half. The problem is that we don't have enough healthcare workers, we don't have enough healthcare facilities, and in the end, mental illness is still a second class illness. It's not something that, and if you untreated mental illness is extremely expensive. treating mental illness is expensive, but not treating it is really, really expensive.
Two more comments on this theme, and then let's move on. Okay, Ken, then Mike. Yeah.
Okay, so I think if we're expecting all the different levels of government to get together and come up with a plan, it would be the right answer, but I think it's probably not going to happen because it's just way too complicated. We have short election cycles. We have a bunch of different individuals, groups within parties who have different agendas, and so it just gets bogged down. And I do want to give people hope here. We actually do have some really simple solutions. They'll be hard to implement, but they're not complicated, that will deal with a big chunk of the challenges that we see. So we can go to the federal government, bail reform for violent repeat offenders. At some point in time, we should highlight these individuals. They're either deeply sick and they shouldn't be on the streets, or they're just not good people and they shouldn't be on the streets at some point in time. We can't have this revolving door of just catch and release that we currently have. The reason I highlight that, if you look at the individuals that we come across at the City of Vancouver, it's actually just a very small number of individuals that are creating most of the challenges that we see. You can Pareto chart this. If we identify about 300 people, we will deal with more than 80% of all the challenges that we have. There are some individuals that have had between 800 and 900 interactions with police. Okay? So you do the bail reform for repeat offenders, and then you open those beds and you get people that are deeply sick into the help they need. Will it solve everything? Absolutely not. But we can have a meaningful impact very quickly within, let's say, 5 years if we do this. It is literally that simple. We just need the political will. I know the provincial government, like every single government it seems out there, is struggling with finances. But to my colleague's point here, it's expensive, but it's way more expensive not dealing with the situation. So all of a sudden, even if you're not concerned, if you're only concerned about the dollars and cents, this is the right thing to do. So we just have to get on it now. It's literally that simple, and we will have a huge impact.
Mike?
Yeah, just to finish up here, to say that the three levels of government can't get together, we did this. We did it for COVID. The three levels of government got together really quickly and found solutions. 6 people a day in BC are dying. That's reality. We need to do the same thing we did for COVID and sit down and come up with quick solutions, get to the problem. But when we go back to the very basics of what can municipal governments control, we're not going to be able to control fixing mental health, certainly not alone. It's way out of our control. So when I say municipal governments can look after the low-hanging fruit, possibly, that's what we can control. But we cannot, we have no control over the health systems, Fraser Health, they all have different ideas themselves, all the different health groups. So let's talk about what municipal governments can control, and I believe that's perhaps address the poverty issues, the seniors that are living on our streets. I think we can do that reasonably quickly. But if the three levels of government really want to fix this issue, we can do it, just like we did with COVID.
So one of the things that you historically have been able to control is your official community plan. You build out, you say, this is where we're going to put in density, this is where we're going to focus on infrastructure, and you had the discretion to do so. Not so much anymore. Mike and Richard, then I'm going to go to you because I know that it's causing issues there in Coquitlam, and for each one of you, how do we deal with your ability to determine what your official community plan is going to be and build out the supports that you need to make that happen in a manner that is affordable in a very unaffordable region?
I'm going to try and be as nice as I possibly can. And look, I understand the provincial government wanting to build more housing more quickly. We all recognize that. But the provincial government hasn't really got much experience building housing or planning cities or anything else. So,
I thought you said you were going to be nice.
this is the nice version. So we have planners that have been planning cities for years. They're experts at doing that thing. I'll invite anyone to come to Burnaby and tell us we don't know how to do density and we don't know how to build housing. There was no need for this hitting municipalities with the heaviest hammer they could possibly find. All they had to do was say, look, we need you to build X amount of housing and leave it up to us to do it. We're very good at it. At least we believe we're very good at it. Just give us a mandate, let us go, and if you want us to build affordable housing, then fund it. We can't build affordable housing alone. The levels of government have to fund it. When we got out of the housing business in the 80s from the federal government, we're now paying the price for those non-affordable houses being available now. And we're going to take a long time to catch up.
Richard?
Well, if that's the good cop, the challenges. It's funny because Burnaby and Coquitlam and City of North Van and Vancouver, these are communities that were really building a lot of housing in the Lower Mainland. We were advancing policy really quickly, and we were doing a great job. And I remember the idea the province had was, let's figure out who's not doing the right job and let's analyze this. So we all assumed then that a heavy hammer would come down on those that weren't pulling their weight. But instead they changed the rules for everybody so that nothing that we used to do works anymore. We used to build all kinds of housing, and I would be going to one groundbreaking every week. I would have to turn down 2 more to limit it to 1. I've been to 1 groundbreaking in the last year, and it's the only one I was invited to because it's the only one we broke ground on. And if we're not breaking ground today, we're not cutting ribbons 3 years from now. The challenge that we've got as a province, for example, there's a site not far from the SkyTrain station at Braid. It's a massive site. It'll take 2,000. We've approved it for 2,000 homes 6 years ago. The province is responsible for 1 tiny approval, and we're still waiting. The fence is rusting. There's a forest growing up among the freshly. This site has been ready to be developed for 6 years, and we can't get a shovel in the ground because the province won't fix this one little element of it. And I recognize that there's lots of challenges the provinces have as well, but the province has to talk to municipalities and has to listen to UBCM and has to recognize that if we're not partners, as Mike just said, we know what we're doing. And if we don't know what we're doing, step in and tell us. But if we do not know what we're doing, don't tell us to stop doing that, because that's what the province did in 2023. And as a result of it, my last term, we will build, as mayor in Coquitlam, we'll build less housing we'll start less housing than we've started in any of my previous terms. And all of my other terms, we just kept increasing our housing supply.
How many approved building permits are sitting there unutilized?
20,000.
How many?
About 20,000.
20,000.
About 20,000 approved development permits. Yeah. 20,000 units. So it's funny, the province came down heavy with us because they said we needed a housing target. So they set our target at 6,000 units. And I asked the minister, so you want us to slow down then? Because if the towers that have cranes sticking up out of them right now in Coquitlam get completed, we will have met our housing target. But we won't be digging any new holes. Partly, and it's not all provincial, there's some Trumpism there's some federal immigration stuff, there's all kinds of other reasons why the housing sector is now broken. But if we don't fix it really quickly, we're going to have a generation that won't be able to afford to live here, a generation of our kids that will move to Red Deer, Alberta. And I don't know why I always cite Red Deer, Alberta. It's probably a really nice place, but
It is a nice place.
but I think I did it the last time I was here too.
Yeah.
But our challenge is that we're not building enough housing, and that the level of government that is causing the demand, largely the federal government that essentially was bringing in 500,000 people every year, and justifiably they were choosing Metro Vancouver. That level of government isn't supporting the housing that Mike just talked about. We are trying to get the housing that we're building today to also subsidize the non-market housing, which is a ridiculous policy that suggests that I, as a homeowner, don't have to pay into affordable housing at all, but my kids should pay extra so that someone else can pay less because we need affordable housing. This policy is not going to work.
Ken, City of Vancouver, what's your take on, it's different because you haven't been so opposed to the mandates from the provincial government, and you're aggressively advancing policies that you think will help to address housing issues.
Yeah, look, when we were elected, we highlighted that we had a housing crisis and an affordability crisis as well. And so a lot of the things that the province has sort of come up with kind of already aligns with what we're doing in Vancouver. So I don't want to say it's a moot point, but it isn't as pronounced as some of the other communities. And let's just, if we can have a really authentic conversation, it doesn't work in certain communities. I think if you have a blanket for everything everywhere, it doesn't make sense. And even in Vancouver, there are some areas where some of the stuff doesn't make sense, and it would be reckless upon us not to speak with the residents and hear what they're saying. And if they make valid points, we should be able to, as fully functioning adults, adjust our policy to make sure it works, because that's what we're elected to do. So as a backdrop, we have been pushing really hard. We've been very aggressive or bold, I should say, in making sure that we deal with our housing crisis. And so since we've been in office, about 20,000 units have been approved in the last 3 years. And we have another 20,000 units coming into public hearing before the end of our first term. And while I can't guarantee that they're all going to get approved until the public hearing's over, barring something catastrophic, a lot of those units should get approved, and that could mean up to 40,000 housing homes approved in the City of Vancouver. And to give you context, we only have about 200,000 units. So in one term, in one 4-year period, we are going to approve another 20% of all the housing that is in the City of Vancouver. And so that's where you can be bold. Now, we benefit from the fact that we have infrastructure in place. We have the Canada line, we have the Broadway line coming in as well. And so it makes logical sense. Eventually, yes. Yeah. 2027, fingers crossed. So like in that context, density actually works. And so we're happy to do it. And we can't hide from this problem. If you look at the last 3 years, I think that in 2022, the population of Vancouver is 661,000. Today it's 750. We've had about 90,000 people come into the city of Vancouver in the last 3 years. And so you can stick your head in the sand and say, we got to slow things down. But the reality is something's going to break. Either regular folk can't afford to live in the city and they leave, or people don't come in, or everything gets bid up. So the only thing that we can do to help alleviate this situation and make life more affordable for residents is approve the building of more homes of all types. And if we do that and people can afford to live here, guess what? We have vibrant communities. We have single-parent families that are able to live in the City of Vancouver. We have nurses and teachers and doctors and firefighters and police officers and restaurateurs, servers. They can all make it work in the City of Vancouver, and it builds vibrant communities. If we don't approve these homes, none of that happens. Right. And so we've been very clear. We're going to be bold. Everyone knows where we stand.
Just before I come to you, Linda, Mike wants to just jump in here for a sec, because you've had great success.
Yeah, so I just wanted to be sure that we have 40,000 or close to 40,000 units sitting approved, but there's no guarantee that any of those will get built, given the economy and everything that's happening right now. So the provincial government says we're responsible for having homes being lived in, which is very different than approvals. And cities are not responsible for making sure that, homes get actually built. We do the approval process. Now, where it goes from there is way out of our hands, and that's not what the province is saying. So I don't know how they're going to manage that. So I just wanted to be sure that everyone understands that approval and getting built are two very different things.
Two very different things. Linda.
Thank you very much. Well, City in North Vancouver, we've been delivering, really innovative policies around housing for decades. And so when this shift happened a couple of years ago, and I got a phone call to say we were going to be on the naughty list, I can't repeat actually what I said.
You could hint at it.
Well, you've got to be
Not for public airways. Yes.
kidding.
Yeah.
I thought it was a joke. The City of North Vancouver in the last census period grew 9.9%. We are 12 square kilometers. We're basically built out. So anything that's built is infill or redevelopment. And, I can't say that we see that same kind of, building or growth happening in my neighboring municipalities. So, we are very dense. And we really looked at the methodology and said, this is not going to work for us. And so I wrote a very pointed letter and had conversations with the housing minister and the premier around, you can't just put out a methodology and a way of doing this, as my colleagues have said, and expect that it's going to work in all municipalities. And so I've been really clear with the province, and even though some in my community is like, why have you not signed that letter with your colleagues? And it's like, different approaches. I have been very clear. We are going to continue to grow. We do not shy away from the growth, but we have done this very purposefully and intentionally. We have a plan. We've executed that plan over the decades and continue to move it forward, council after council. And we are going to do that with that purpose and intention and not be so concerned about this arbitrary deadline that we get, because that doesn't end up with good results. It ends up with very unintended consequences. And my point to them was, we as to Mayor Hurley's point, we don't build the homes, we approve the homes. We build community. So all the things that we've been talking about, these other issues, we build community. We have infrastructure that we deliver. We have infrastructure that we hope will be delivered with the help of the senior levels of government. We want to really create a very vibrant, connected, diverse, welcoming community. Welcoming community. And it isn't just about ticking boxes and saying, oh, great, we reached a number. That's not what this is about at the local level. Like, we really take very seriously and are very passionate about the people who live in our community. We want to hear from them. We want to welcome new people in. But when you start to just focus on a number, that other piece that's so important gets lost. And we have met the obligations, or I guess I'll call it a direction, a mandate. But then now we have Bill 25. So that's just another piece. It's just, so the last conversation I had was, you need to take a pause here. You actually need to pause and let us all take a breath and actually start to see how this is actually going to work. As a nurse, you don't just, make an intervention and then say, we'll see what happens. It's like you assess, you evaluate, then you might make an adjustment, and then but if we're all just expected to create numbers we're going to end up with a region that for decades has been, it is a very livable place. And I would argue, I still believe it is a very livable place. But we want to maintain that, and we want to build upon that. And we can't just do that by continually to just, they're not going to get built. But at the end of the day, at some point, that pendulum is going to shift, and there will be a lot of building. And we're gonna find that we're going to see the consequences of what many of us have been saying for a long time.
So, Brad, welcome. I'm guessing that you got caught
Nice
in
to
traffic.
show up.
Yeah.
No, Port Coquitlam is so unique. We exist in our own time zone, where this event started at 6 o'clock rather than 5 o'clock. So, my sincere apologies. I'm sure I agree with everything all my colleagues have been saying.
But when it comes to be your ability to be able to now move forward, make Port Coquitlam an attractive development site for the people who will build that housing, what's standing in your way right now? Because you're facing that same issue. And so what's standing in your way? How do we get beyond that?
Well, I concur with the comments that my colleagues have been making with respect to the provincial housing mandates. It's an approach that is not informed by individual circumstances in communities. For instance, Port Coquitlam, we have the largest railway in Western Canada going through the middle of our community. A third of Port Coquitlam is in the floodplain. We have significant portion of the community that's in the agricultural land reserve, and we're surrounded by 3 rivers. The ability to just produce units is very limited. And these sorts of factors are present in just about every community in the province. And that's why a decision was made some time ago that those decisions around how to build and grow are best made in those communities. And what we have seen with this approach is completely upending that and instead reducing the decisions to a mathematical formula that is decided in Victoria. And I think that disconnect is now becoming very obvious to anyone who's paying attention. It is, I think, the result of a policy that was developed not in consultation with local government, where it's about how do we achieve an outcome. Personally, I think this was more about picking a political fight with municipal governments and giving the impression that the province was very serious in doing something about housing costs. And when I've had engagement with provincial officials and you seek a rationale or a reason why they went down this path, do you know what gets referenced to me more than anything? Well, in Oak Bay 10 years ago, they said no to a housing development. And we can't have this rampant NIMBYism, as if the province's housing challenges are going to be solved in Oak Bay. But I mean, if there's more to it, I would love to hear it, because that has been cited to me more times than I can count as the reason why these decisions can no longer be made locally. They must be made in Victoria.
So one of the elements, of course, that people who are in the development sector go, well, there's so many fees and charges and development cost charges and that mount up, and the pro formas don't work. And they reach out to you, they reach out to Metro Vancouver and say, give us some relief. Do we have the ability to readdress the way in which we're going to work with those developers to make it financially viable for them to build the units that we need? And then, Richard Stewart, even if you were to return as mayor, you could go to more groundbreakings.
Well, I'll tell you, 30 years ago, I was the president of the BC Home Builders Association, and I was screaming at government that we need to find a better way to finance the infrastructure costs associated with development, because population is growing and the costs of population growth can't be borne by housing. It can't be borne by new schools or new hospitals or any other thing you have to build when population grows. It has to be funded somehow. We need a funding model for the infrastructure associated with. If we don't have one, then Metro Vancouver has to impose a DCC in order to deal with population growth. Then we're imposing DCCs in order to connect housing to grids. And the province actually has this effectively a DCCs on all kinds of other social elements, where we're making the cost of new housing higher which raises the cost of existing housing, makes it harder to make a pro forma work. The housing doesn't get built, therefore there's a shortage of housing, and therefore the price of housing goes up. And all of this is a predictable economic model if we don't fund the infrastructure costs associated with population growth.
Leonard.
Look, in a rising market.
Yep, it's working.
In a rising market, no one cares about what cities charge municipal governments. Seriously, nobody cares. When things are down, let's be blunt about this, and I say this as someone who has voted to approve every development I think that's come before council in the last 7 years, and I'm not exaggerating. Municipal politicians are the only folks that developers have some control or say over, because we get elected. They don't control interest rates, they don't control population growth, they don't control federal government policy around foreign students living in British Columbia, et cetera, et cetera. So it's with respect, it's very easy to come and say, oh, municipal governments, if you just, cut the DCCs or don't ask this amount of infrastructure to be included in part of the development, things will be fine. So I'm not convinced that what we can do at our level is really realistic. If we're going to solve the housing crisis, I come back to the point I made earlier, for folks who can't afford it, it's going to have to be subsidized by the province. You either subsidize the building or you subsidize the individual renters. Those are the two choices. So we're not going to solve it by playing with DCCs. And I say that as somebody who's a mayor of a community. We're just in the middle of revising our DCCs, and a number of folks are very concerned about it. And they're concerned because, frankly, they're already in trouble. As others have pointed out tonight, we've approved lots of developments in Nanaimo, but they're not going ahead because of the economy.
Not because of DCCs.
Not because of DCCs. They're not going ahead because of the economy. The margins are not there, and we have smart people who work for us. I give the public servants of British Columbia a great deal of credit. They tell us what developers need in order to make a project work, and right now those numbers aren't working. And unfortunately, we have a provincial government, I don't say this terribly critically, that doesn't have a pot of money to throw out there to build what I'll call social housing, which would keep the developers and the construction workers and everybody else busy right now. So we're in a rather tough situation, and I feel for the community. And I feel for the people who need the housing who are not going to get it. And I feel for the development community because many people, with great respect, it's easy to pick on developers. There must be a few here in the audience. You buy the damn property, you go through zoning, you face upset neighbors, you're paying the bank, and 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 then maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, you actually get a bit of revenue. It's a tough business.
Maybe.
It's a tough business. In a rising market, looks sweet. You buy it, you get it rezoned, you flog it to somebody else, it's their problem, and you get out before things crash.
Okay, that brings up an interesting point, though. We were in a rising market for so long that so many people were complaining about the fact that it was making housing completely unaffordable, and one policy after another did a really good job of putting a cap and actually deflating that rising market. How do you deal and address with those issues when you still need to get people to build, especially if you're wanting affordable housing? Ken, to you in Vancouver, how do you address that?
Well, I think it's the responsibility. So everything that was said up here, I totally agree with, right? Like there's like so many moving parts. It's super complicated. No one's wrong here. I think it's the role of the cities, the city of Vancouver, to create an environment where home builders can build homes, and they can do it efficiently. And if we create that environment, we don't take a position on the capital or the business risk or whatever, but we create an environment where you can get a permit a lot faster. You get through all the regulatory red tape, so you're not sitting. You don't have holding costs, and you have to build risk premiums into it, and you're exposed to all these different risks in the cycle. We do our job, then we let the market take care of itself. Right now, we're in a situation, whether we like it or not, Mayor Hurley is absolutely right. Like, you have approvals and then you have what's actually being built. We have a ton of approvals, so we've done our job, and they're not getting built because they're not penciling out. So we can debate all day long whether or not it's fair, whose responsibility it is, but if we want homes to be built so we don't create a hole 3 years from now, we have to look at the problem differently, and we have to say, what can we do? Where can we find, opportunity to help these home builders get these numbers to pencil out, or accept the fact that they're not going to get built, and we're going to have a big problem in 3 years. And so that's what we're doing, and it's not easy. We're asking a lot from a lot of people. Like at the City of Vancouver, we came out with the zero means zero property tax increase. We had to find $120 million of either additional revenues that weren't taxes, or getting rid of duplication of services, or discretionary items, and that's a hard lift. But that is done so we can create an environment that's more affordable, not just for residents, but it gives us an opportunity to make it a little easier for home builders to have these things pencil out.
So one of the elements in a rising market, and Brad, I know that this is an argument that you have had, is and a strong economy, people doing well, makes housing far more affordable. What can each of you do? I mean, it's very easy for us to point the finger at the provincial government and say, you're not doing what you need to be doing to be building a strong economy. We can point to the feds. We can point south of the border if we want to. But what can you do individually to help to enhance the economies of your own jurisdictions? Brad, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll come to you, Linda, okay? And then Mike.
The two, there's something tied here, and my colleague Mayor Stuart wrote a very articulate post some time ago that talked about, and you've just kind of layered on those thoughts around hanging so many obligation and costs around housing. And to add to that, we've hung our economy on housing. We've become a real estate-based economy. And that has created a whole host of problems. And Mayor Krog is right. When it felt like we were on a rocket ship to the moon that was never going to end, everyone was happy to do it. Government was happy to take in the fees. Developers were happy to buy them. And land value became completely decoupled from local economic conditions in this province and this region. And my view is that a lot of chickens are coming home to roost by allowing this transition and transformation into a real estate-based economy to occur. Now, to tie that into your question about what can cities can do to support a local economy, well, one of the most obvious things is we have to have places for people to go to work and to do things, and for businesses to locate, and that means industrial land. Another result of the real estate-based economy is that the pressure on cities to allow the conversion of industrial land to residential was immense, and many, many cities went with that. And as a consequence, we have a massive shortage of industrial land. And we have businesses, and I talk to them regularly, who are having to go to Washington State and to Alberta and other places, not only because of some of the other regulatory and tax implications, but because that's where the land is. We've allowed a whole bunch of this industrial land to be converted. And you don't get it back once it's gone. So my own city, like every city, our record is not blemish-free. But I will say I am proud that we have done better than many in terms of resisting that temptation. And as a result, we've actually gone through a bit of an industrial boom in Port Coquitlam. It's helped keep our taxes low. It's created places for people to go to work. And again, not, with respect, not service sector employment, but industrial employment. Pays good wages. You can pay a mortgage on it. You can raise a family on it. Mayor Hurley said that if Saputo was going to leave Burnaby and go anywhere, he was glad it was Port Coquitlam, and we have them in Port Coquitlam now. But again, this is a symptom of, I think, the larger problem that has slowly but surely taken hold over successive governments and many years, and cities can do a lot by ensuring that our industrial land is protected.
So one of the things that businesses, of course, need is they need to have a sense that when they go to City Hall, they're not going to run into a bureaucratic nightmare. Linda, I know that you want to jump in, but I'm adding that as a little twist.
Okay. Well, just to Mayor West's point, I mean, you know, that hasn't happened overnight. That loss of industrial land has been, you know, decades in the making, and has really been policy decisions that were done way back in the day, and people thought that was a good thing at the time, and we are all now living with the consequence. So just an example of these unintended consequences that we think are great back, you know, but, you know, we don't want to be in our 80s looking back going, these are the consequences. We saw that coming. In my community, it's really about what are those enabling factors that we can look at. And I just want to touch on that's going to support business. For us, we are really looking at right now, I mean, again, small municipality, we've done a significant job around revitalizing the waterfront and really providing an unbelievable public space that has really supported our small businesses in that area. We're going to face a challenge. ICBC is relocating, and they're expected to be gone by 2027. So I've had a lot of conversations around to the province talking about, you know, that's a loss of 1,700 jobs in our community. That's significant to the small businesses in that area. And so for us, we need job replacement there. I don't need more housing. We do a very good job of delivering housing. We've done it again. We've done it well, and we've done it intentionally. But I need jobs there. I'd love a new hotel there. We really want to, you know, move, west in terms of our shipyards and really redevelop that area. But in terms of, I just want to touch on a point that you said, Stuart, which was, you know, everyone pointing fingers. And to be honest, I'm actually really tired of the conversation of everyone pointing fingers, and it's somehow like the province's fault or the federal government, it's all local government, it's our planners, you know, we're not fast enough getting out permits. It's pretty exhausting, and it's not actually, in my mind, how, as a leader, that you actually solve a problem. And I'm not, you know, we can talk all the time about let's come to the table, but we really fundamentally, there's many systems that we have to work within that are completely broken. The funding model's broken for local government. The funding model's broken, or sorry, the model for delivering housing is broken. And so, you know, we do need to really have, like Ken said, we need to all be the adults in the room and actually look at how can we actually we need to look at how we deliver, whether it's infrastructure or the housing, whatever it might be. It needs something different. The old ways of doing this and building communities is not going to work with applying the solutions that worked even 5-10 years ago. They need something different. And so when I talk to the development community, particularly around the housing piece, you know, and I hear a lot about, you know, your fees, you're too slow, you're this, and, you know, we're pretty fast. The reality is I say to them, look, I don't know all the sides of your business. You don't necessarily know all the sides of what we do. And we need to have a better understanding of that, and we need to actually come and figure out what might work. What levers might we be able to do? And I challenge my staff all the time. What are the levers that we might have that's going to make this different? You know, how can we actually support and enable them to look down the road to say, you know, to at least give them some idea of what might be possible for them to build as the markets, you know, will shift. But if we're stuck in, you know, this old way of doing it, they don't have that outlook. They won't have that outlook, and we're going to get caught in the cycle of nothing being built, and then we're back to, you know, very little housing being delivered. Prices are extremely high. And for me, you know, at the local level, I look as the marker of success. I have 4 children, 24 to 31. I have one that owns his own home in Vancouver. I'll tell him about you. In a good way. Sorry, just to be clear, in a good way. Sorry. But really, my marker of success, and I said this when I first was elected, I believe my marker of success is when young people in your community or have grown up in your community at least have the hope to come back. You know, they might go off, but they have the hope of coming back into their community where they lived and grew up. That for me is my marker of success. I don't know if we're going to be able to deliver that, but I work every single day to make sure that we will at least try our best to make that happen.
That's a great aspiration. Mike, to you, and then I'm going to come to closing thoughts because we're already over time and we keep going for another 2 hours, I can tell.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
You know what? Your question was, what can we do to help things along? And what we have done at the City of Burnaby, well, we have finished our new official community plan, which is a 4-year process. In that, we're doing a lot more work around protecting employment lands, as Brad mentioned earlier, because we've got away from that a bit, and we really need to start focusing on keeping jobs in our community, so that when we build the housing, that people don't have too far to travel. That's really how we're going to deal with many issues, including transit and how traffic moves around the city. But I think the most important thing we've done is we have cut our approval times in half. And I think if you talk to any developer or any builder, they will tell you that the most important thing that we can do for them is to speed things up, because now they're not as beholden to the banks as they might have been. And so we have really come a long way in speeding. Like, for example, a single-family home right now in Burnaby, if you meet your expectations and bylaws that are in there, 6 weeks for approval time. So, that's really where we're trying to focus on what we can control. Because, we can blame all the other orders of government, and God knows we have a right to do that. But at the same time, we have to be sure we're taking care of business at home and doing everything we can within our control to make the best possible processes so that people can have certainty when they come to City Hall what they're going to face.
When I started off, I said, as mayor, you're the CEO of your jurisdiction. Most CEOs get to say they rally their team around them and they go, this is the direction that we're going in. They interact with a few other agencies and make decisions around that. You bump into those agencies and they start telling you how you're supposed to do your work. And then you have the people who you are representing start telling you how you're not doing your job, or that they're not happy about this. When you take a look at your terms in office and moving forward, do you think that you're making a difference? And I'm sort of putting that question out there because there's people who are also saying, I want to be mayor. It doesn't look like a particularly easy job. But do you feel that you are seeing, barriers move out of the way and that you're starting to move forward? Ken, I'm going to start with you because you're running for re-election.
Yeah, why?
Yeah. Well, you told me a couple of years ago you're bound and determined to run again.
Yeah, no, I will be running again.
Yeah.
If everyone can close their eyes for a sec, I want you to remember, if you close your eyes and go back to October of 2022, we had 300 structures on the downtown east side. There was random gunfire shooting, shots fired at our cars. Canis propane tanks exploding. 5 random assaults in the city every single day. Crab Park, Oppenheimer Park, Strathcona Park encampments. You can open your eyes now. That's no longer there. We still have a humanitarian crisis that's going on in the downtown east side, and we have people that need mental or health care. But yeah, we've made progress. Violent crime is at a 23-year low in the city of Vancouver. We have right-sized our police service for the first time in 15 years. We fully funded our fire department for the first time in 8 years. We are the first fire department in North America, actually the world, to have suits that do not cause cancer. We've got our fiscal house in order. We inherited a mess. We're not blaming anyone. That's the situation we were put in. And we had to fix the foundation, and now we built up reserves by $150 million. The reserves were depleted, and we can come out with a 0% property tax increase. And that's the first of many we think we can deliver on. The place is safer, fiscal responsibility. We've cleared up regulatory red tape. We've taken business licenses from about 853 different types to 95. We've sped up the permitting process across the board. So on a lot of metrics, we've done really well. So yes, I do believe, despite the doom and gloom that you hear out there and the things that we haven't gotten right, and there have been things we haven't gotten right, I'll be the first one to admit it. As an aside, when I look back, when I reflect upon the first 3 years, I really underestimated how big the challenge was. I underestimated all the different stakeholders that would be, providing resistance to the things that we wanted to do. And yeah, there are a couple of things that, if I could take back and do differently, I absolutely would in a sec. But based on all of that, I think our team has done a pretty good job of turning the ship around from where we were. And now we have the opportunity to really lock in those gains and celebrate what makes Vancouver great. You had the question earlier, how do we make things better from an economic perspective? Well, one, you stabilize. That was the public safety side. Two, you work on the plumbing, right? So permitting, bylaws, regulatory red tape, all the interactions with the city you do. But three, look, we are a global city. We are a global region. Vancouver, Burnaby, Port Coquitlam, Surrey, we are all in this together. And we compete for talent on a global level. You know that more than anyone else. You're not just going to South Van and North Vancouver for your talent. People around the planet are looking to Vancouver, just like they look to Austin. Oh, sorry, I have to go.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap you up now.
We create an environment where people want to be here and they can succeed to be here, and we wave the flag and we bid on things like Web Summit, which is $500 million of economic activity to the city of Vancouver. FIFA, which will be $1 billion to the city of Vancouver. Last of Us, the show, on and on. That's the stuff we wave the flag for. We bring the business to Vancouver, and we're going to be great.
Leonard, do you think that you're moving the goalposts here and that you're having success?
Absolutely, and I can also tell that none of my voters are in this audience. Sorry.
No, but they're watching online.
There's a cheeky nature to me. Look, I tell everybody over and over again when I get nice remarks about, it's a tough job and we appreciate it, and I say, look, no one forces you to do it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a choice. And if you draw pleasure from it and you think you're accomplishing something, you're doing something good, then carry on. And if you're not, then it's time to consider figuring an exit strategy. Personally, there's a number of projects underway in Nanaimo. We're one of the 5 fastest growing regions in the country. I'd like to see them through. I'm running again, and I enjoy the job. I mean, I like people, believe it or not. Some days, not everyone is as charming as the next person. But by and large, you know what? It's a very fulfilling thing, public life. I remind everybody of that. And the sad thing is that we don't have enough, with respect to the politicians I see, particularly in North America, we don't have enough good people prepared to step forward. There is a special joy and honor in doing this. And when people don't, or people don't bother to vote, particularly at the municipal level, then you tend to get people that are not going to do the best for their community. You have to have an ego to do this? Yeah.
Linda.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love this job. I absolutely love this job. And yes, I think we are delivering, and we are achieving what we set out to achieve. And, part and parcel, that is, when I first became mayor, we developed the first strategic plan ever of a council in the city of North Vancouver, and we have been very intentional in terms of where we're aligning our budget and investing in the infrastructure that we believe in, creating the partnerships that have been there for a long time. But we work very closely with our Board of Education and our Health Authority and our Indigenous governments, as I said. So the business community. So it is a collaborative effort to build a very livable city. And this year alone, we're going to see, the largest infrastructure that the city's capital project that the city has ever delivered with the Harry Jerome Community Recreation Center, where we have a new hospital wing, we have a new school that will open in September, new parks, 5 new parks, multi-use paths, cycling networks. So, that infrastructure that, that makes that community, that helps build that community and create those vibrant public spaces. We have been really focused on the people we serve, and that's why we do it. From an operational side, my CAO, with her staff have been putting in the pieces in place in terms of improving our systems and our permitting and all the things that we need to do to create a really healthy business environment for everybody. We have the lowest commercial property rates, the lowest property vacancies in the region. So we have been very successful. And, from the comments I get from the public, yes, we hear the criticisms. Yes, there are challenges, but we don't let those define us. We listen to them, we understand them, we work on them. But at the end of the day, this is about creating a very welcoming, inclusive community. And yes, we're making the mark.
Great. Richard, you are not running for re-election, but when you take a look at your term, you feel that you've made a difference.
Yes, I feel I've made a difference. I love the work we do. I hate how we do it sometimes, but I love what we do. Ken aspires to be me now. Vancouver aspires to be the most recent community to get new SkyTrain stations. Because our shortage in this region is housing, yes, but it's also a shortage of SkyTrain stations. Because we can do a lot of housing around SkyTrain stations, and we need to find solutions on how to move people around. If we don't find solutions and we add 1 million people at today's car ownership rate of 0.6, that's 600,000 cars. In order to accommodate 600,000 cars, you'd have to pave an area just to park them. You'd have to pave an area the size of Port Coquitlam. It's just not a bad idea.
I see your future. I see your future.
But so it outlines the challenge that transportation is part of the challenge as well,
yes,
and we need to solve that. Coquitlam's doing its part. We're actually solving the problems of Oak Bay. Wait for it. Our deputy CAO took a position as CAO of Oak Bay, so that should be solved really quickly. We used to talk about build-out. What is your community's build-out? Our community's build-out, when I was growing up, was 225,000 people. We could never imagine Coquitlam at 225,000 people. We don't talk about build-out anymore because now it has to go upward. We can't keep moving out. Say, we got to 225, so now we're out to Abbotsford and Chilliwack and wherever. We have to find solutions that involve better density. And finally, like Leonard just mentioned, I worry about the civility of public discourse, because I'm leaving at a time when actually people like me. I think, I hope, but I look at some of my colleagues who are leaving because they can't anymore, or they're leaving because it has harmed them. It has harmed the way the public discourse has changed so much and is continuing to change so much, to the point where I look at these people up here. These are wonderful folks. I love working with them. I worry about the next generation may well not step up, and we'll end up with the only people willing to run are those with really thick skins or really big egos, and not necessarily for the right reasons. And from my perspective, that's my biggest negative, my biggest worry about the future of public policy in British Columbia.
Mike?
No, I'm honored and privileged to hold this position, and I just love going out and talking to the residents of Burnaby, and I think we have really moved the needle, and how Burnaby does business. Right now we have 3 community centers being built. We are building a new police station that should have been built 25 years ago, as should some of the community centers. We're building a new, we built 2 new fire halls. We're building a new theater as well. So we have a lot on the go. A lot of the cranes in the city of Burnaby right now are actually our cranes that are building our facilities. So I think we've really moved the needle. It's been a tremendous honor to serve as mayor of Burnaby, and the people of Burnaby are just great to work with 99% of the times. It's always an honor to be here, and I think our council in the last 8 years has really moved the needle in our city.
Brad.
Well, first, I'm very glad that Richard found a new audience for that joke, because he's been using it in the Tri-Cities for 4 years. That's right. Finally clear. Well, like I said, different time zone in Poco. Like anything, it has its moments where it can be frustrating, especially the challenges that are complex, long-standing, require multiple partners to be involved in solving. But when I walked in through City Hall, the first day I became mayor, I said that beyond anything else, I would try to maintain a laser-like focus on the core municipal responsibilities, the things that people actually send their tax dollars to City Hall for. And I think it's very easy in our roles, and it comes from a good place of wanting to help people, but it's very easy to be distracted. Lots of different shiny objects, all trying to get your attention. And you can lose focus of what job number one is. And I think we've done a really good job in Port Coquitlam of maintaining that focus on our core municipal responsibilities. And as a result of that, you have these moments where you have reminders of why you're doing this and the difference you can make. And for me, the most recent one of those is a letter I got from a mom, low income, 2 children. She was able to take her 2 kids to our outdoor swimming pools all summer for free, because we made our outdoor swimming pools free. And she sent me the most heartfelt letter about what that meant to her and her family. And, so you have these moments where you're like, this is why. This is why I'm doing this. This is who this is about. And there's more that we can do. So I'm looking forward to running for re-election. I want an election, too. I love elections. So I don't have a declared opponent yet. If you're out there, you have a Port Coquitlam address, please run for mayor. It's good for democracy.
Well, at its highest point, when you do move the needle, when you make a difference in people's lives, I can only imagine that the job satisfaction is extraordinary. On the other end of the scale, I can't imagine how excruciating it is. And so I thank you all, anybody who stands up to put their name forward for public service. I thank you for doing it, because it is a very difficult job. You put the rest of your life on hold, your families make commitments, and I want to thank you for what you do in your role in your communities, and also thank you for coming out for tonight. We're way over time. Didn't even get to all the issues that I wanted to talk to, and then there's just regional issues that that would have been another quagmire. We'll do another panel maybe in the future. Thank you for each of our panelists. There you have the coveted Conversations Live mug. Please take it home with you. It's only for people who are our panelists. So thank you very much. Thank you to all of you who joined us in person and all of those who joined us online. We'll see you again in the near future. Thank you for tuning into Conversations Live, an Oh Boy Productions program. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can find our previous and upcoming episodes at conversationslive.ca. You can also follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Again, thank you. I'm Stuart McNish.